Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're immersing ourselves in source material about a political event that, if you just glanced at the headlines, might seem pretty straightforward.
Orderly, even.
Exactly, an orderly, if maybe sudden resolution. But when you look closer, when you really analyze where and how this all went down, it starts to smell profoundly, suspiciously like something else.
Something else entirely.
We are talking about the abrupt and, quote, voluntary dissolution of a pretty significant political movement. But the announcement didn't happen on its home turf. It was broadcast to the world on Saudi television.
And that's the whole game right there.
And the sources we've looked at, they don't mince words about the optics. This wasn't framed as a healthy political conclusion, where leaders weigh their options and announce a pivot.
No, not at all.
It was immediately pegged as this raw exercise of external power. One of the most cited descriptions we found, it didn't call it a policy decision. It called it a hostage note with better lighting.
And that phrase, a hostage note with better lighting,
Yeah.
it instantly captures the whole state of play for you, the listener.
It really does.
So our mission today is to look right past that official script and analyze how political legitimacy is, well, manufactured and controlled when coercion is the main tool.
Right.
We're moving beyond that old 20th century idea of proxy conflict, with tanks and money. This is the 21st century upgrade. It's about controlling the narrative through forced media appearances. Why defeat your opponent when you can make them announce their own irrelevance on a foreign state channel? That's what we're breaking down.
Okay, so let's unpack the initial facts here, because the details are absolutely everything. We have a political movement, a huge organization claiming to represent millions of people.
A major voice in their country.
A very significant domestic voice. And then, all of a sudden, it announces its own immediate total end. I mean, this isn't a policy tweak. It's basically a political suicide note.
And here's the unavoidable red flag, the one you mentioned right at the top.
The location.
The location. This decision, supposedly reached by the movement's own delegates, is announced halfway across the world on a TV network that belongs to a competing and, let's be honest, often hostile regional power.
The stage was set deliberately outside the very system it was meant to be serving.
That is the first and most critical clue. I mean, in healthy politics, a major movement announces something like this to its own people, usually in its own capital city.
In their own language, through their own media.
Exactly.
Right.
Announcing it on a foreign network gives the broadcasting nation, the external power, just complete ownership of the narrative from the very first frame. It signals to the world, and this is the crucial part, to the movement's own followers, that the center of decision-making has been relocated.
It's a broadcast of where the true power now resides.
Precisely.
And the immediate aftermath, that's what provides the human texture that just strips away any pretense of this being normal. The sources we read highlight that the delegates, the very ones who are supposedly choosing this fate, they immediately became, quote, strangely unreachable the second the broadcast ended. Right.
This wasn't some policy committee going on a retreat. Funds went dead. You had families, colleagues abroad suddenly speaking out, and not like people who were respecting a private decision. They sounded like people who had genuinely misplaced their loved ones. They were afraid for their safety.
And that distinction, the difference between a political leader going silent because they chose to versus one who's silent because they cannot speak, that's just fundamental to this whole analysis.
Yeah.
The dead phone line is the real-time, ugly counterpoint to the polished TV broadcast. And in the face of that, that immediate human element, the official rhetoric, just becomes instantly, cynically transparent.
The word voluntary.
The word voluntary being, as one source put it, sprinkled over the entire scene like air freshener in a room full of smoke.
That's a great line.
It is. The intense need to scream voluntariness is the perfect giveaway. It just confirms that this wasn't a political action. It was choreographed political theater. So if the voluntary bit is just air freshener, what did they think they were masking? I mean, surely they have to understand that this exact scenario has played out before. The pattern is recognized globally now.
You're absolutely right. And that recognition is what's so fascinating. This isn't some new isolated incident. It's evolved into a recognized genre of political statements.
Genre.
Yeah, there's a specific established context where announcements made in Saudi Arabia, resignations, dissolutions, you name it, are later revealed, or at least very strongly suggested, to have been made under duress. The system knows it, the actors know it, and the global media, they now go into these things with a ton of institutional skepticism.
And the big one, the one everyone points to, is Saad Hariri in 2017.
The most potent and cynical precedent? Absolutely. You have the sitting prime minister of Lebanon. He flies to Riyadh, and instead of coming home, he just pops up on Saudi TV to announce his own resignation.
It was bizarre to watch.
Incredibly bizarre. Uncomfortable, tightly controlled. The whole world was watching this unfold.
And what that incident really revealed was the core lesson of this whole genre of political theater, right? Hariri's statement, made right there under those circumstances, was later walked it back under a completely different sky.
Right, once he was physically able to leave the kingdom.
But here's the thing I keep coming back to. If the outcome was a public reversal, doesn't that prove the coercion tactic failed? Why would you try it again?
That is a powerful point, but it requires us to sort of redefine what success even means here. The goal isn't necessarily long-term policy success. It's immediate, televised humiliation and narrative control.
Okay, so break that down.
Hariri was eventually allowed to leave, yes, and he reversed his statement. But for a crucial window of time, the desired geopolitical narrative was set. It was global news. He resigned. The script just traveled faster and better than the truth.
And that initial coerced narrative had a real geopolitical effect.
It did. It set a dangerous precedent. It taught the actors that the optics of submission, even if it's temporary, are worth the effort.
So the goal isn't to hold the person forever. It's to force them to perform the script for the world, to establish a temporary political fact that lets other actors respond, even if they know the performance is fake.
Exactly. It's a short-term strategic win. It's designed to generate immediate confusion and force everyone else to react to a new, fabricated reality.
And if that coercion wasn't already obvious from the dead phones and the history, you just have to look at the almost dark comedy of the official language they use.
It's a truly pathetic flourish of euphemism.
Right. They don't just say, we force them to comply. They substitute that reality with a vocabulary that sounds like a bad corporate mission statement.
Mixed with parental advice.
Yes. We saw terms highlighted in the sources like pursuing a real path and this idea of nurturing.
Oh, the term nurturing is so revealing. It's the ultimate condescension. It frames political sovereignty as if it were a sensitive houseplant.
Right. A houseplant that needs to be watered and tended by a superior power until it grows into the right shape.
The perfect regional ally shape.
Mm-hmm.
And that juxtaposition, the dead phones and the fear on one side versus the soft botanical language of nurturing on the other, it's just absurd.
It is.
We are watching the sophisticated deployment of what one source called the vocabulary of guardianship, wearing the mask of guidance. These are soft words doing exceptionally hard, coercive work.
The language is designed to depoliticize what is a fundamentally forceful, high-stakes political command.
It tries to substitute paternalistic care for raw command and control. Almost like the movement dissolving wasn't a choice, but a necessary developmental milestone.
Guided by a benevolent hand.
That is precisely the intent. And the sources reveal how cynical this really is behind the scenes. They mention this deeply cynical analogy, the political welcome packet for visiting officials.
A welcome packet.
Yeah, if you're a visiting leader, don't expect a real negotiation. You should expect a script, a pre-written future. They don't call it coercion in the packet, of course. They call it clarity. Step 1. Read the statement. Step 2. Sign here. Step 3. Congratulations, your political future is now enrolled in the Clear Path program.
The Clear Path program, where everything is simplified down to 2 choices. Compliance, or what they call an extended stay in miscommunication.
Which is, of course, a terrifying euphemism.
For political confinement, or worse. The black humor is just staggering when you remember the stakes are the lives and political freedom of millions.
Which brings us to the core conceptual leap here. This is, as we said, proxy conflict upgraded. Historically, you'd finance or arm different factions. But that's inefficient, it's bloody, it's messy.
Right.
The modern battleground is legitimacy control. The new strategy is brilliant in its cynicism. You don't have to defeat your opponent militarily. You just have to force them to announce their own irrelevance on camera.
Destroying their credibility with their own base.
And neutering them as a political force. They're performing their own political execution in a room where the only safe opinion is the one on the teleprompter.
But if everyone, the press, their families knows this is coerced, doesn't it fail to achieve any real legitimacy? Isn't the credibility loss for the broadcasting state just too high a price?
That's where we have to shift our thinking about who the audience is. If the goal was to persuade, international diplomats or the Western media, then yeah, it fails spectacularly.
That's not the real audience.
No. The true audience is domestic opposition and regional rivals. The message isn't, this was voluntary and legitimate. The message is, we control your ability to speak. We control your legitimacy. and we control where your leaders sleep at night.
The success is in the public display of dominance.
Exactly. It signals to any future opposition group that even if you lead millions, your fate can be decided thousands of miles away on foreign state TV.
And this contrasts so sharply with how healthy political systems are supposed to function. I mean, that's the yardstick here. Healthy politics involves leaders arguing in public, voting in daylight, and delegates answering their phones when their families call.
The bare minimum.
It's the baseline expectation. What we're watching in these broadcasts is something else entirely. It's what our sources call legitimacy by confinement.
Power is exercised by deciding who speaks, from where, and signaling the fate of those who dare to refuse the script.
So the ultimate measure of success, it just depends on the objective.
It does. If the goal of broadcasting that dissolution was genuine persuasion to convince the world this movement just willingly folded, then by any objective measure, it failed immediately.
Because of the suspicious circumstances?
Right. However, if the goal was humiliation,
Mm-hmm.
if the purpose was to signal clearly that the powerful center writes the endings and everyone else just performs the script, then it was a perfect broadcast.
A successful display of coercive power projection.
It confirms that the performance is the point.
And that distinction between substance and performance, that's the core insight here. It connects this whole event back to how all of us have to process global media. We have to train ourselves to look beyond the slick production and ask, who's missing? Whose phone is dead? And why is this being broadcast here right now?
Power isn't just exercised in a back room anymore. It has to be seen to be exercised in this specific ritualized way. And the spectacle of forcing an opponent to read their own political obituary is often a more enduring and psychologically damaging win than just defeating them in a battle.
It's a message that penetrates deeper.
Much deeper. And that's the strategic currency of this upgraded proxy conflict. So if forced public statements are becoming the new geopolitical currency, the main tool for controlling legitimacy, it raises a really important question for you, the listener, to think about.
What happens to genuine political discourse when the optics of coerced humiliation are seen as a greater strategic win than an actual military or electoral victory? If the script itself is the victory, where does the truth even go to have a debate? That's what we'll leave you with today.